Good morning. It's good to see y'all. John chapter 4. Get your Bibles open. We're going old school this morning. I've got no other slides. No other slides this morning. We're doing it. We can do it, guys. We can do it. John 4. Every now and then, it's good to refocus. God cares about the church collectively. He cares about you individually. He wants to help you continue to grow your faith in Him. But it's good to remember, because life gets busy, we get focused on so many things, that it's not just about us. It's not just about us. So every now and then, we're going to talk about the privilege, not the obligation. I mean, the privilege, I'm hitting on motive here, to share the good news. It's the good news. It's not the mediocre news. It's the good news. The good news with others. Some people in life, they're great. They're doing wonderful. They're on that narrow path that leads to righteousness. Other people, not so much. Some people are having a great day. Some people are having a horrible day. Some people have had a great upbringing. Some people have had a horrible upbringing. That's life. And then two people they meet. It's like Jesus and this woman at the well. Let me give you a little bit of context here. So, at this point, we're about to see the beginning of Jesus' what we call the Galilean ministry, okay? John, who was called John the Baptist, John the Baptizer. John the Baptist is in jail, if you will. He's been preaching the kingdom of heaven is at hand, okay? He's crossed with the leader now. He's been put in jail. Jesus hears about this. His ministry had been in kind of that middle to upper region of Judea, okay? Jesus hears about this. John has been preaching the kingdom is at hand, and also had a baptism of repentance for the forgiveness of sins, Luke chapter 3. John is tied to Jesus, not only because they're kin, but because his whole ministry focused and centered on Jesus Christ in this kingdom. And he's been out there baptizing. Jesus has also been baptizing. Now, not him specifically, and I think one of the reasons is because he didn't want the distraction of baptizing you. But he's been baptizing and he's growing in popularity. Jesus begins to head north now. Now that John the Baptist is out of the picture, he's going to go up to that northern territory to proclaim the gospel. And quite frankly, it's going to be kind of safe for him as well. Because the Pharisees in Judea, in Jerusalem, were much more hostile than in the north. And not saying that he didn't have difficulties everywhere he went, but it's also making sense. So now what happens is Jesus is going to travel from Judea to Galilee, but he's got to go through where? Samaria. So here we go. John chapter 4. John chapter 4, verse 1. Now when Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, although Jesus himself did not baptize, but only his disciples, he left Judea and departed again for Galilee. Okay, easy enough. Now you got the background, you get what's going on. And he had to pass through Samaria, just like we had mentioned. So he came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. You could go back to Genesis' account. Jacob acquires this land, gives it to his son Joseph. We find out Jacob also ends up digging a well. Which, by the way, a little cool side note, y'all know that well still exists today. You can still visit that well. Pretty neat. It's about 100 feet deep, but filled with a lot of rock at this point. It only just can catch water. But isn't that neat, just a side note, to think that we actually have a place that we know for a fact Jesus was probably within a 10-foot radius of. Kind of neat, side note. But there they are, okay? Jacob's well was there. So Jesus, wearied as he was, because he was a man-God, because he was a man-God, he's traveled probably about anywhere from 20 to 30 miles at this point. He's parched. He's tired. He's thirsty. wearied as he was from his journey, was sitting beside the well. It was about the 6th hour. I'm not going to get into this, but I'm just going to go. I'm with this. I think this was probably noon. There's some debate about this. Middle of the day. Hot, tired. A woman from Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink," for the disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria?" For Jews had no dealings with Samaritans. Yeah, okay. Now, listen, preachers and teachers, we're not trying to be boring, and hopefully we're not trying to just tout things that we've studied. But the reason why we go into a little background information is because sometimes it is necessary to get an accurate feel of what's going on. Because if you have no concept or no background information, you're like, okay, so he goes into the land and talks to some shit at a well. Cool, I guess they didn't talk to each other. Moving on. It's like, no, hold on a second. Hold on a second. So there's a whole background here. Let's start with Samaria. Okay, the Samaritans. So in 2 Kings 17, and you can do this on your own time, you're going to read about how Israel is taken away into captivity, okay? They're taken away into captivity by the Assyrians. All right, easy enough. What will typically happen is whenever a king comes in and takes over a people, they're going to take the cream of the crop to their own lands, and they'll serve them. And Israel is not unique, and so that's what ends up happening. Of course, they're going to kill a lot of people also. But what happens is they don't necessarily always snuff off every single person. Now, 2 Kings 17 doesn't say this, but we learn from just the next chapter reading about Hezekiah that whenever he restores worship, he's going to send a message out to those of like Manasseh, for example. Well, hold on. I thought everyone was taken away into captivity or killed. Well, no, there are people, Jews, that still existed in that northern kingdom. So what does that tell you? So there they were. There were some people left behind. Well, what the king of Assyria did is he took people from other lands and nations and he planted them into Samaria. Well, guess what happened? They brought their foreign gods. And then God sends lions. It's totally bizarre. Read it on your own time. Lions begin to attack the people. And then there's a man who counsels the king of Syria and says, listen, these foreign people in this land don't know the God of that land. And he's clearly attacking them. So you need to send a priest back to them that can teach them the way of the land of this God. And so he does that. And so he teaches the Samaritans. But here's what these people in Samaria end up doing. They end up worshiping their gods, and now they just added Jehovah God into the list of their gods. And so they're straddling the fence, and they're worshiping Jehovah God and their gods. But guess what else they do? They marry the Jews that were left in Samaria. And their offspring were called Samaritans. And they ended up being this really unique breed because the Gentiles didn't like them and the Jews didn't like them. Don't know if you've heard of this before, but the Samaritans, do you know that they have their own Pentateuch? So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. They claim to this day to have the oldest, most accurate manuscript of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And they only accept those of the Old Testament. Everything else is not authoritative. The Decalogue, that's a fancy way of the 10 Commandments, they actually have 11. Their 11th is this, and Mount Gerizim shall be established. Now, what's that about? Because they believed they are descendants of Jacob, and they believed that Jerusalem is not the holy place and holy temple. Mount Gerizim is the holy place. In fact, a lot of cool stories we could go into, but like the flood, it's the one mountain that was not covered. And it remained pure and holy. All sorts of cool stuff, interesting stuff, I should say. And it doesn't help that during the Maccabean era, there's a Jewish military leader that comes in and sacks Samaria and messes with their temple. So let's just put it this way. They don't like each other. They don't like each other. They say, though some dispute this, but most people say that many Jews would not travel through Samaria, that they would prefer to go to the east of Jordan and go around Samaria. Well, that's enough, right? But let's add on top of that this Samaritan is I already gave it away, didn't I? It's a woman. And listen, there's no escaping this. During 2,000 years ago, of course, Romans loved to have a wife and a little chickie lady on the side. That was very normal. Very, very normal. Got a wife and got a girlfriend. The wife is for all the responsibilities at home, and the girlfriend's the one for fun, and the one they like to go around and do public events with. I mean, it's not good. Well, Jews would never do anything like that, and they'd never look down on a woman. Sorry. Not true. Not true. Now, some of it went too far, but some of it also was just a conservative culture. You know, do you think that it's probably the wisest thing for me, a male, to meet with a female one-on-one in private? That's kind of a cultural thing we talk about. There's no law against it. There's no thing that says no minister shall meet privately with a woman to discuss. But we're saying, hey, maybe we want to watch those things. Well, in that culture, there was also just a conservative view into how men would interact with women. So I also want to be kind to them. So a man would not even necessarily talk to his wife or daughter in public. Not because he was ashamed or embarrassed because of them, but there was just kind of some decency among them. Matter of fact, some of the Pharisees, they would call them bruised and bleeding Pharisees, because some men, if they were walking down the street and a woman approached, they would close their eyes so as to not look at her, and they'd run into a wall. And so they called them the bruised and the bleeding Pharisees, okay? So what I'm saying is that you need to understand the culture. So whenever Jesus says, would you give me a drink? It's groundbreaking already. As soon as his mouth opens, there's something to learn. We're talking about this morning because I want to believe that everyone here wants to share the good news, but we struggle with it. We struggle with it. Let me first of all just tell you this. We have got to get the typical thinking of our culture out of our head. I'm going to say something bold. We could get into the political realm. Just that alone, half the country wants the other country dead. You're like, that's not true. I'm like, I don't know. It gets a little intense. Things like that. And I'm saying, I hope Christians don't think that way. But I am. I'm using stereotypes here. We don't want to talk to you. We look at people. We start to get a sense. We get an idea of maybe who they are, what they look like, what they believe, and we already think, what? It's a lost cause. We are supposed to be filled with joy. I believe, sometimes the Greek doesn't translate well. Like whenever Jesus calls his mother like woman. Like my mom would have smacked me if I ever called her woman. Sometimes it just doesn't translate well. Give me a drink. He wasn't saying that. Hey, give me a drink. Jesus is already refreshing, is what I'm saying. He's already refreshing. People need to see in us joy and love and seeing that, what we see whenever we see you? We see someone made in the image of God. And here the Son of Man is, but he's asking also kind of vulnerable position. Hey, could you help me? We're always like, we need to help everyone else. I always like that too. We're always about helping other people. Let us be a good example to others. Well, I tell you, there's a lot of good examples everywhere that I've benefited from. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say, even people that don't proclaim Christ, I've had good examples from people and people that have helped me. Is that okay to say that? So let's have a little bit of humility about it. Can you give me a drink? Before we go on, it is good to remember that the reality is, while we have a common story of sin and falling short, we do have different stories in our lives. And you never know who you're encountering. You never know what their life has been like. You never know the opportunities in life that they've had or they have not. You've never known if they've had a loving father or not. You don't know what their personal culture or their family is or their race is. You don't know what their beliefs are. And we need to be super attentive to these things. Now watch what happens here. You ready? So give me a drink. She's like, this is bizarre. Why are you even talking to me? You're not even supposed to be talking to me. Jesus, I'm in verse 10, answered her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. The woman said to him, sir, you have nothing to draw water with, and the well is deep. Where do you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob? He gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and the livestock. Jesus said to her, everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never be thirsty again. The water that I will give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life. The woman said to him, Sir, give me this water, so that I will not be thirsty or have to come here to draw water. I'm dying to know. I want to hear their inflections, and I want to hear like I wonder the last part. She, oh sure, oh give me this water, please. I love not to have to come this well, or it's really give me this water. But what I do know is that there's a few things going on, and Jesus is the teacher, so learn from him. Okay, he starts with something in common, water. Everyone knows what it is to be parched, but he's going somewhere with this. He sees an opportunity. And he takes something and he turns it into spiritual. Do you see that? Brethren, let's learn from it. Have you ever had an opportunity in life where you take something that you have in common with someone and you go somewhere spiritual? Good for learning from the teacher. Because there's always something bigger going on in life. And that's what people struggle seeing. They always struggle seeing the big picture, which is also why, and I don't think it's a coincidence, we're coming right off of chapter 3 with Nicodemus, and there's a lot of similarities. Jesus starts with something, and they don't get it. And he'll give them more, and they still don't get it. And the first thing they're doing is he says something, and they're taking it so literal, they don't understand the spiritual application to it. Jesus says, living water. Oh, I'd give you living water. Now, she's at a well, you see, of just, stale well water. I mean, not that she's not happy to have it, but when you say living water, that has the idea of a spring, okay? Which one do you want, stale water or spring water? So, sir, let me know, is there some water source I'm not familiar with? What's going on here? This living water is very interesting. Just a couple of passages to illustrate the point, and we're going to keep on moving. One of them, Jeremiah. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 2. Now, in this context, he's having to get on to his people through Jeremiah. And in chapter 2, verse 13, let me start in verse 12. Be appalled, O heavens, at this. Be shocked, be utterly desolate, declares the Lord. For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewed out cisterns for themselves, broken cisterns that can hold no water. Do you see that? They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters. This concept, this language, this idea is nothing new. Israel has heard it before, okay? And God's saying, I am the life giver. I give the living waters. You're a broken vessel. You're a broken cistern. You leak water. I'm not leaky, okay? I can hold it together, and I can hold it together for you. In Isaiah chapter 55, look at this one. Isaiah chapter 55, a beautiful passage. Powerful, I think, passage. One that you may want to share with your friend who's just kind of, wandering around. Lost in this world. Isaiah 55 verse 1. Come, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. And he who has no money, come, buy and eat. Come, buy wine and milk without money and without price. Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread, and your labor for that which does not satisfy? Listen diligently to me and eat what is good, and delight yourselves in rich food. You got all these people that are just working so hard. We say, work smarter, not harder. And there's a spiritual application of this. You're working and you're laboring and your mind's on all this stuff. And as Paul says in Romans 6, how's that working out for you? How's that working out for you? Not too well. So here it is, this living water that he's offering her. Sir, give me this water so that I will not be thirsty or have to come here to draw water. So now verse 16, Jesus said to her, go call your husband and come here. Ooh, this is good stuff. Go call your husband and come here. And this woman who's had a little bit to say all of a sudden gets real quiet. Woman answered, I have no husband. Jesus said to her, "You're right in saying I have no husband, for you have 5 husbands, and the one you now have is not your husband. What you have said is true." So there's this thing that we do in life, and I'm not getting on to you because I'd be a hypocrite, but we don't like getting into awkward conversations. I would assume this is one of the reasons why sometimes we don't talk to people. Like, it's the good news, but you don't want to talk about why it's the good news because there's bad news. And what's the bad news? Sin. And who's guilty of it? Everybody. But Jesus said, listen, the Spirit's going to come and he's going to convict the world of sin, righteousness, and judgment. In other words, can I paraphrase it? Let the Spirit do his work. Oh, he does it through you. He does it through you. Why did Jesus say this to her? Well, one of the obvious reasons is that he's going to give her some behind-the-scenes information that he shouldn't know. So, as Rod had pointed out, whenever he's doing these kinds of things, he's confirming who he is as a messenger. But there's another thing going on that I believe that he needs her to confront. This isn't working for you. Someone said she had 5 men. On her 6th man, didn't know that she was waiting for the 7th. I love that. Whenever people say, we don't know that there's any sin with this woman. We don't know that there was any sin with this woman. Can I just say this? I'm going to be real blunt. We need to understand in Bible study the difference between a possibility and probability. We get silly sometimes. Yeah, I guess it's possible that all 5 husbands died. Do you buy that? I don't. It's possible that she's been totally innocent and just 5 guys have put her away. That's possible. But probably there's the truth somewhere in the middle. And she's with another dude. You know what she's got that everyone else has? She's got a spiritual hole that she's trying to fill with the physical. And Jesus is calling it out. We have got to rethink what we're doing. Well, I don't want to have to go in there and tell someone they're wrong. No, think about it this way. You need to go in there and help someone who's sick. Would you agree with that? It's a bad day when you go to the doctor and the doctor knows there's something wrong and he just says, you know what, honestly, who am I to tell you you're sick? Love you. Enjoy the cheeseburger next week. You're like, dude, you're not helping my diabetes. You got to help me out a little bit here. So that's a wonky thing that we do. It's a really wonky thing that we do. So let's just acknowledge it. The woman said to him, "Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you say that in Jerusalem is the place where people ought to worship." Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming where neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming and is now here, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for the Father is seeking such people to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth." Let's learn from Jesus what he does here. So, very, very interesting thing. Now, it seems to me that she's dodging what Jesus just threw out, right? Others have said, no, I think she just accepted it, and now she wants to worship and offer a sacrifice for sin, and so now she's just trying to figure out, should it be Mount Gerizim and Mount Jerusalem? And listen, I'm just going to tell you, I'll be honest with you, I just don't buy it. I don't buy it. I think she's dodging it. I mean, that could have been what she's doing, but I think he just calls her out, and it gets awkward, and then she's like, and attention over here. Hey, this whole mountain, controversy. The thing is that even if that's not what's happening there, let me just tell you, because I've seen it more than once, it's going to happen to you. You're very kind, and you point something out, and people change subject. Do you notice what Jesus does? He pulls her back on the subject, doesn't he, about the man that she's with? Nope. I think that's interesting. He made his point. His question said it all. He entertains her discussion. And he's truthful again. Hey, salvation is from the Jews. Fill in the gap. The Samaritans are not correct about this. But what he does is he points her back to where he's trying to lead her the whole time. To who? God. Brethren, let me put it this way. Give yourself permission not to tackle every single thing whenever you're talking to someone. That's one of the reasons why you don't talk to someone, because you're afraid of what you're going to get into. Because you feel like you got to swallow the whole pill in one setting. You feel like you got to figure everything else. You feel like you got to get a person right and right today. Guess what? That burden's not on you. Do you know that sharing the good news can actually be quite enjoyable? Even in situations where people get heated. Believe it or not, I've been there more than once. And I still can go home and go, that was a good day. That was a good day. Because whenever you can lay down at night and say, I try to bring the truth in love and fairly, then God will take care of the rest. You can sleep well on that one. Okay? So don't put that burden on yourself. So I'm going to simply put it this way. Whenever you're talking to someone, you are not trying to convert them to a cappella music. You're trying to convert them to Jesus. If someone wants to talk to you about why you don't use instruments, that's fine. Talk to them. But don't lose the goal on what you're trying to do. Are you talking to them about what you want to talk about or what they need to hear? There's a difference. Quit doing that to yourself. And I'm going to tell you, I'm saying that because I did it way too long. I literally had an approach whenever I was first going to Starbucks and people would be coming in. I was getting into probably at least 5 impromptu Bible studies a week, and that is not an exaggeration. And I had a process. I started with John 17. I went to Ephesians 4 with oneness, and then I talked about what faith was, and then I got into all the divisions in religion. Now, I was smiling, and there were a lot of good conversations, but I realized that what I was trying to do was I was just swimming against the current. And then at some point, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to kind of get to know someone. And I'm going to find that common ground, and I'm going to ask questions, and I'm going to listen. So like this, if I may, just entertain me for a little bit. But here, Jordan and I are this week. We're about to take our little 20-minute walk in the morning, and our neighbor. I've been dying for opportunity, looking for opportunities. Not saying we can't make them, but natural ways to talk about the Lord. And he's asking about how we're doing, and I ask about how he's doing where he worships, and he shares a little information. And guess what opened up? A door, and Sean and Jordan went right through it. Now, he wants to talk about premillennialism. Guess what? I'm not going to get into premillennialism with him because he and I can't even agree on how someone comes to the Lord. Prioritizing. So I didn't want to abandon premillennial. Can we call it PM? We didn't want to abandon PM, okay? But what I did is just for the moment to satisfy that was to give him my big view of a concern. Not, you're wrong for this and what, you're a moron. No, hey, here's my concern with that. And can you see where I'm coming from? And he went, ooh, would you send me more on that? Oh, okay, but in the past, I'm like, well, if you look at Revelation 1, we're talking about things that are soon, but I would have just stated it and we're in it. And then I would have gone home going, what did I just accomplish there? So we gave a little overview, and then I took my hand and I said, but my thing is not something like that, but more on a basic level. Like we can't even agree on. And then he, took the bait? I'm okay saying that. He took the bait, and I sent him over passages. We'll see what happens. We got to quit doing this. And then Jordan and I went inside the house, and we're just like, that was great. Another opportunity. It's amazing how you view sharing the gospel and how it changes. But the last thing, and here it is, verse 25. The woman said to him, I know that Messiah is coming, he who is called Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things. And I love this. Jesus said to her, I who speak to you am he. So Jesus didn't normally do this. whenever you're just all over the scriptures and you read that, you lose context. Yeah, look, he told him he was the Messiah. He didn't normally do that. Matter of fact, he's not going to be that clear for about another 2 years in his ministry. I speak to you am he. What a gift that he gave the Samaritan woman. Ring the message out. To every nation, ring the nation out. The message out we just sang. You got Nicodemus in chapter 3. You got the woman at the well, chapter 4. Let's compare the two. Nicodemus, educated, mature, honored, inside, leader, man. You got this individual, chapter 4, a woman, a Samaritan, outside, uneducated, embarrassing, rejected by her own people. By the way, people have speculated, why was she getting water at noon? You've heard this. There's actually other water sources, and typically women would go in the morning and an evening to draw water. Women together. Why? Because it was cool and they were protected in a group. Why is this woman out getting water on her own? And so we speculated. I wonder if she was just the shame because people knew about her and her lifestyle. But yet here she is, and Jesus is ringing the message out to every nation, to every woman, even the Samaritan. And you know what I love about this? Look at this in verse 27. Just then his disciples came back. They marveled that he was talking with a woman, but no one said, "What do you seek?" or "Why are you talking with her?" So the woman left her water jar and went away into town and said to the people, "Come, see a man who told me all that I ever did. Can this be the Christ?" I've always loved the detail of that. She showed up with her sister, and she showed up to the well with her little jug. And I guess she forgot about her jug because she found the water. And she left, and she had the source within her. The thing is, there's differences between the woman at the well and Nicodemus, but I can tell you what we all have in common. We are all broken vessels, leaking, looking for the spring that builds up into eternal life. And praise God for that. So I hope this has been an encouragement to you. Know your audience. Jesus talked much differently than with Nicodemus than he did the woman. Not every situation is the same. I'm not saying this. How deep, how high level scriptures, all that. You listen. Use your head. But know that everyone's in need. God bless you as you do that. And one last thing. Be joyful. We're spreading the good news. God bless you as you do that.